welcome to His Gov TV, and my name is Collins Nanaya Abebrese. So in this video, we are going to look at the Coussey Constitution of 1955. Already we have been looking at the constitutional development in the Gold Coast from 1903 up to 1951, where we are today. In our previous video lesson, we looked at the 1946 Alambans Constitution, and we all agreed that that constitution made huge changes with regards to the executive and the legislative council. All right. However, there were still some limitations or weaknesses in the 1946 Constitution, and therefore it was described as outmoded at best because it failed to address some of the issues that the educated elite were hoping to see. I mean, some of the changes that they were hoping to see. But then the 1946 Constitution also came with it some advantages, where we saw that the Joint Provincial Council of Chiefs, which was created by Gettysburg in 1925, was maintained, as well as Asante, for the first time in the political history of Ghana, also was integrated to be part of the Gold Coast, also to be part of the Legislative Council and the Executive Council. They even had a rep in the Executive Council. Then also for the first time, there was an unofficial majority, all right, in the Legislative Assembly. For the first time, Africans were in the majority in the Legislative Assembly. So you realize that the 1946 Constitution brought about huge or major changes. However, there were some still weaknesses and certain limitations with regards to the Constitution. And some of these limitations was that even though for the first time Africans were part of the Executive Council in the 46th Constitution, their membership was still in the minority, which the educated elite felt was not right. Okay, now the educated elite were also reduced to be just as spectators. Why? Because the number of seats allocated to them, like 5 or so, were allocated to the educated elite, whilst the chiefs maintained 9 seats, as well as the Asanteman Council also nominating 3 or 5 membership. And so you realize that the educated elite were still reduced to be just spectators. Okay, you're also saying that it failed to meet the aspirations of the people at that time, because the people were looking for something way better off than the changes that this constitution brought, and that was the Constitution. And the last limitations we looked at was that the 1946 Constitution failed to actually include the Northern Territories as well as the Transvolta Togoland. These two areas were also not integrated to be part of the country or the colony, and that these were some of the limitations or disadvantages in the 1946 Alambans Constitution. We are going to look at another constitution which was also promulgated in 1951. All right, 1951, and this constitution is termed as the Coussey Constitution or the Arden-Clarke Constitution. We will look at why sometimes it is referred to as the Coussey Constitution, and sometimes it is also referred to as the Arden-Clarke Constitution. So if you want to have a video on the 1946 Constitution, you can check in our videos. You have the video there, and then you listen to the lesson on the 1946 Constitution. Now let's look at our lesson objectives. So by the end of our discussion, you should be able to discuss some of the features of the Coussey Constitution of 1951, as we have been doing over the over the weeks. Also state the strength or merits of the Coussey Constitution of 1955. So what will be the merits and the strength of this new constitution? Then the next one will be outline the limitations or the weaknesses of the 1951 Constitution. What were some of the weaknesses of the 1951 Constitution? And so these are our objectives, and they should guide us in our discussions for this lesson. So let's go in there without wasting much time. The 1951 Constitution, the Coussey Constitution, or Arden Clarke Constitution. Now, we have already indicated that the 1946 Constitution failed to meet the aspirations of the people, which was self-rule, independence, for the people, not any more trimming of colonial edges, as we have seen. And so, in order to satisfy the people, the governor, Sir Gerard Coussey, who was there at that time, set up a 39 all-member Ghanaian committee under the chairmanship of Sir Henry Coussey, a prominent Ghanaian judge, to draw up a new constitution that gives the people a real say in the government, and also make the recommendations of the Watson Commission on the 1948 route acceptable to the people. So you recall in 1948, there was a disturbance around in the country where citizens decided to loot, stores belonging to Europeans. So after that disturbances, there was an inquiry, a commission of inquiry was set up to look into the reasons why the Gold Coasters, did what they did by looting European shops, because the Gold Coast had always been known to be a peaceful colony. It was actually a model colony for the British, because while the British were fighting, the Kenyans, the Mumus, rebellion in Kenya and all of that, in the Gold Coast, everything was relatively, calm, peace. So for the first time, for the Gold Coasters to do this, the British decided to look into it, and they realized that the people were demanding for more. They were demanding for independence. And so the Watson Commission then recommended that a new constitution should be drawn for the people that would include the demands, of the people. And that is why the 1951 Constitution, the Coussey Constitution, or the Arden Clarke Constitution was drawn. Now, Coussey Constitution, because the members, the committee, which were set up by Gerard Coussey, who was the governor at that time, to chair the drafting of all these membership, where actually his name was actually called Sir Henry Coussey, all right, and therefore his name was named after the Constitution, Coussey Constitution. We will look at why it was also named after Arden Clarke. Now, it is sometimes referred to as the Coussey Constitution. Yes, the recommendations of this committee form the basis of the 1951 Constitution. So the recommendations of the Watson Commission, Aiken Watson, the recommendation that the Watson Commission brought after the 1948 route, was what formed the basis of the 1951 Constitution. Are you okay? And that is why we say that that was the basis. Now, the Constitution was again named after Governor Arden Clarke, who took over from the governor, Sir Gerard Coussey. So it was Arden Clarke who came to sign the Constitution and then, introduce the Constitution, even though the committee that was formed to draft the Constitution was done by Sir Gerard Coussey. When Sir Gerard Coussey left, it was Arden Clarke who came to take over. And so he was the governor who actually introduced the 1951 Constitution. And so we sometimes also refer to it as the Arden Clarke Constitution. So that's why this Constitution has two names. Now let's look at the composition of the committee formed by Sir Gerard Coussey after the 1948 route. Now the committee was made up of chiefs. So chiefs were involved, ministers of religions, that is the priests, members of the upper elite of intellectuals, lawyers, businessmen, among whom all the 6 leaders of the United Gold Coast Convention, UGCC, known as the Big Six at this time, were also part, with the exception of Nkrumah. Now, interestingly, the Big Six that were arrested or held responsible after the 1948 route, all the members that were in prison after the 1948 route were appointed by Sir Gerard Coussey to be part of this constitution. However, Nkrumah was not part of this member committee. I don't know why Nkrumah was excluded from this committee, because Nkrumah at this point was very popular. Nkrumah was part of the leaders who were arrested or held responsible for being the masterminded of the 1948 draft. So for Nkrumah not to be part of this constitution was a big blow. And of course, none of these or those leaders also recommended that Nkrumah be part of this constitution in the drafting of the constitution. So ironically, Nkrumah was the most popular leader in the country by then. Nevertheless, he was not made a member of the committee. The obvious reason being that he was considered too radical. So this was the reason why Nkrumah was not invited by Sir Gerard Coussey to be part of the members or the composition of the committee to draft the 1951 constitution. And so this will eventually lead to a situation whereby when Nkrumah becomes the first prime minister or leader of government business, he would reject this constitution because he felt that this constitution was a new colonial constitution. So he would reject it and form or introduce a new constitution in 1954, which we shall look at after this lesson. So let's look at the features of this 1951 constitution. Let's begin with the Executive Council. Okay, now the Executive Council, there was to be an Executive Council, of course, cabinet, and these people consisting of 3 ex-official members and 8 Ghanaian ministers drawn from the Legislative Assembly. So for the first time, the 1951 Constitution was going to give Ghanaian membership majority. 8 ministers were to be drawn from the Legislative Assembly to be part of the Executive Council. So you see that this Constitution has fulfilled a limitation in the 1946 Constitution, whereby 3 Ghanaians were appointed for the first time on the Executive Council. However, they were not in the majority. Here, there has been a majority. It has 10. They have rather given 3 ex-official members who were Europeans and then 8 Ghanaian ministers. Now, the Executive Council too. The Executive Council was also responsible to the governor as well as the assembly. One of the 8 Ghanaian members was to be leader of government business, later prime minister, and approved by the assembly. So 1 out of the 8 Ghanaians who were on the Executive Council were to be leader of government business. So an election was going to take place. And interestingly, Nkrumah became that person, even though he wasn't part of the committee that drafted this constitution. So you can see a similarity of what our current constitution, some of the features in there over here. All right, so you see that the 1951 constitution was tried to solve the issues regarding independence and all of that, and granting Ghanaians majority was a big achievement at that time. Let's look at the features of the Legislative Assembly. Now, the Legislative Council in the 1951 Constitution was known as the Legislative Assembly. All right, good. Now let's look at the Legislative Assembly or Council. As I said, now the Legislative Council in the 1951 Constitution will be known as the Legislative Assembly. Was to have a chairman and 84 members distributed as follows. So 84 members. Come on, can you believe that? Can you believe that? We were in 1946, in the 1946 Constitution, we had barely like 30, I don't think, not more than 30 members. Here we have 84 members to be in the Legislative Assembly, and there will be a chairman now, and then 3 ex-official members who were also white. Now, this is how the 84 were going to be shared. 6 were to represent mining, commercial interests, defense and external affairs, finance and justice. Then 37 chosen by the chiefs. 37 seats were still given to the chiefs. Then 38 to be elected directly by the municipalities of Accra, Cape Coast, Sekondi, Takrady, and Kumasi. And it is very interesting when you look at the composition of the 1951 Constitution. It's very interesting how, for the first time, the educated elite who were going to be elected or voted for had one member majority. You know, they had one more than the chiefs, and the chiefs were given a whooping 37, seats to choose. That's quite huge. And it's just interesting. And when you look at this, you might think that the British, the colonial master, just tried to pacify the educated elite by giving them somehow majority, because you have just one majority. It's quite interesting. And the numbers given to the chiefs is also quite intriguing, and it's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting constitution. Now, bear in mind that before we even look at the merits or the good thing about this constitution, when Nkrumah comes in 1954, he would decide to take away all the seats that belong to the chiefs and make all of them to be voted for. And that was one of the reasons why the chiefs actually did not like Nkrumah that much, But we will look at that later. 37 is huge. Now let's look at the Coussey Constitution, the merits, the good thing about it. One of the good things about this constitution was that the 1951 constitution was significant or important because it granted internal self-government to the people of the Gold Coast for the first time. So as we earlier indicated, after the Second World War, the people were demanding for an end to colonial rule. All right. So this constitution came to do that. It came to actually grant the people, internal self-government. So internally, the people were actually the ones, who were ruling themselves. All right. So that is why we say it granted the people self-government internally, because both the executive and the legislative council, all these two councils had African majority or Ghanaian majority, and so internally we were making our own decisions. The constitution afforded Ghanaians the opportunity to be in the majority on the executive council, and for the first time, the executive council was responsible to both the governor and the legislative assembly. So another merit of this constitution was that the constitution also changed the Ghanaian ministers on the executive council with the responsibility to formulate and implement policy. So the constitution charged the Ghanaian ministers on the executive council with the responsibility to formulate and implement policies. It's quite interesting that you realize that this constitution has some sort of features which are almost like the constitution that we are using today. All right, so let's continue. But it says, the last one says, the constitution enlarged the membership of the legislative council from 31 under the 1946 Barnes Constitution to 84, and that was huge. All right, it increased the number of seats for direct election from 5 in 1946 to 38, in 1951, and that was very, 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 very huge. As I was saying, very, very huge. Good. So let's look at some of the merits. No matter what, there will still be some merits and demerits and weaknesses of this constitution. All right, let's take a look at some of these merits. The executive council was still presided over by the governor. Therefore, he could veto any legislation from the council. So the governor still was there, and he chaired the executive council, even though we are saying that the Executive Council had African majority, the governor still chaired the Executive Council, and that the governor could veto the decisions of that majority council. Again, the governor could also dismiss any minister. Can you believe that the governor could dismiss any minister, any Ghanaian minister? Now, the governor could forcefully pass any bill into law in the event that the Legislative Assembly refuses to pass it. By implication, the Constitution allowed the governor to retain his extraordinary power of veto. So, in a situation whereby the Legislative Assembly, which was made up of Ghanaian majority, refused to pass a bill, the governor could pass those bills into law. And it's quite interesting, right? The ex-official members appointed by the governor control the key areas of defense, external affairs, finance, and justice. Okay, and then the last one, the governor also retained the power to dissolve the Legislative Assembly. Wow, the governor had the power to dissolve the Legislative Assembly. It's quite interesting when you look at the features of this constitution. It seemed to me that it was just like, we are giving you what you want. You want to be in the majority. However, you are really not in the majority, because if you look at the weaknesses, the governor was still in control. The governor was still doing shows. Whatever the government wants is what will be done. It's not what the Legislative Assembly wants, or what the cabinet or the ministers, 8 ministers want. No. So in as much as internally we were ruling ourselves, we had majority, we could make laws which were in line with the plans of the governor or the colonial masters, because if any law was not in line with the plans of the colonial masters, it could be vetoed by the governor. So in essence, we have given you majority. However, your majority is useless unless we, the British, endorse whatever you want to do. And this was clearly something which was not good for the country. It looks like we are helping you, but we are giving you one hand, and we are giving you a Bible, but behind us we have a knife that we may use if you dare misbehave. And that is what the kind of constitution that Nkrumah came to meet, which he termed this constitution as a neo-colonial constitution. And interestingly, all the members of the Big Six, they agreed to this constitution. So we have given you the membership. Yes, you are in control. Educated elite, 38, chiefs, 37, blah, blah, blah. We are even few. The British were only like 3. However, the British had the power. So in real sense, power had not been transferred to the local people. And this is why Nkrumah had to come in and change the narrative. Give absolute power to the people. I think this constitution is quite interesting, and I think we have come to an end with our discussions, and the next video would be on the 1954 constitution, and we will look at what Nkrumah will do to change this narrative of giving the people majority in both executive and legislative council. However, the governor was still master over all of them. He could veto both the executive and the legislative assembly, their plans or their policies. Thank you for watching, and do not forget to share, like, and subscribe to this channel. Bye bye.